Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 10-Minute Daily Reality Check. John Keegan and I are here. Joe, we got somebody really amazing on. And before I tell you about who's coming on, it's a gift from me to you because you're in Los Angeles right now.
Yes.
And I know that if we had to be renamed, so back in Northern California, back in the 90s, there was somebody called the Bash Brothers. It was McGuire and Canseco. Right, and there were these two strong men on steroids that were hitting home runs. I know you're not a huge sports fan.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know who they are.
McGuire.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Yeah.
Big deal, right?
Was that the 90s?
That was the 90s. Yeah, it was a long, long time ago. So if people had to name us, we would be called the Belch Brothers, okay? Because we're constantly, no matter what we eat, no matter what we do, it seems to be doing some type of thing inside our gut.
There's always a bloating. A good day for me and you is for when we have a great poop and we're just flat stomach and you feel like you can take on the world. Your stomach feels empty.
Right, you feel great until we have our first glass of water in the morning, and then we have to
triggers it. Something triggers it.
Right,
who knows what it is.
We'll eat air. We'll eat nothing. I mean, I'll make breakfast. You'll stay at my house. We'll have highly dosed coconut yogurt with probiotic, maybe 3 berries, and that's about it. And it's a bad food combination.
Yes, it's
like, maybe we should have eliminated the berries and just had air.
Yeah, I know.
Even air doesn't do well. So today we got Dr. Michael Ruscio. How do I pronounce it again?
Michael Ruscio.
Right? Who is a amazing doctor up in Walnut Creek, correct, Michael?
That's the spot.
Okay. Who's a gut health guy who probably talks about poop all day long and, and digestion and all this other stuff. And I got to tell you, this is the podcast I've been looking forward to for so long. Michael, you have 2 guys sitting here right now that have tried just about everything. If I gave you a list of my supplements, look, and I know I've gone to naturopaths and I sit and I talk and they all say the same thing, gut health. I've gone to ancient Chinese healers that look at me and go, oh no, bad gut. You know, those guys that you find in San Francisco, right? Oh no, bad digestion,
And saying when you go to Chinese, they say, wow, so tight.
Yeah, so tight. Yes, exactly. They know how to hustle you.
Yeah.
So I've gone through this, and still to this day, I've gone on every single diet. I was on the vegetarian diet. What did that do? It took my blood sugars up to 120, so I got on the paleo diet, which keeps my blood sugar at 90. So I'm okay. I can't eat that many carbs because I can't seem to break them down, So I've done everything, but yet I still have that reversed feeling inside my stomach. I feel like air needs to come out and it likes to come up instead of going out. And John has the same issue. So please, I know other people have the same thing. Talk about gut health. How can people heal? And why are we a nation full of people with really so much toxicity in our guts nowadays?
Great question. And maybe the foundational couple points regarding this conversation is that your gut is really the foundation of your health and well-being because it impacts so many other systems of your body. Arguably, your gut is the primary source of inflammation in your entire body. And that's one of the fundamental reasons why gut health is just so important, because these annoying symptoms, gas, bloating, reflux, constipation, loose stools, they are indicators that you may have inflammation in your gut that then permeates through the rest of your body. And we know that inflammation underlies many different disease processes. So it's not just that the gut symptoms are annoying and they mean nothing else, but that they're annoying. Those annoying symptoms are really indicative of things that may be causing damage in other systems of your body and across your entire body. And as someone who specializes in gut health, it's fairly routine that I'll see someone come in with depression and insomnia, or acne and low libido, or fatigue and weight gain. Plus, maybe they have some digestive symptoms. And when we address and correct the digestive symptoms, all those other symptoms like being overweight or having fatigue or having depression or having insomnia also improve because of this far-reaching impact of the gut. And part of the reason why, there's many reasons why gut problems are becoming more prevalent, but part of it has to do going all the way back through our in utero phase and through early infancy, which is we have more cesarean section births, more early antibiotic use, less breastfeeding and more formula feeding, and also just generally speaking, the environment that we live in has become much more hygienic, which has had positive impacts to it, but also some of the unintended negative side effect or consequence of having a very hygienic environment is our immune systems don't fully form, and that includes the immune system in the gut. And then you pair that with people having too much stress, and as you made a note about earlier, people eating really terrible foods and making bad food choices, and then more antibiotics on top of that, and we see some very fertile soil for the propagation of gut problems, which are pretty common. IBS affects up to 30% of the population. So, these things are pretty common. And the thing I hope that the listeners will take away from this is that if you're trying to figure out what to do, if you've gone on the internet and you've looked at your symptoms, and my symptoms could be thyroid problems, they could be detoxification problems, they could be food allergies, what have you, I would always say start with the gut. It's not a guarantee, but you have the highest probability of fixing the most symptoms if you start with investigating and optimizing your gut health first.
Well, what's interesting is that when I grew up, I was born in 62. I was a formula baby who regurgitated formula. I was a milk baby who regurgitated that. And literally, my nickname in school growing up was Diarrhea Dave.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Really? Brutal.
Diarrhea Dave?
Diarrhea Dave.
In school?
In school. In
what do you
high
mean,
school.
like your brother?
No.
It was like,
that's what everybody called me.
I thought it was like kindergarten.
Double D.
School?
No, high school and college.
Wow.
It was consistent because I was eating whole milk and Frosted Flakes and bad processed food and Swanson's TV dinners and all that stuff is balanced. I don't get stomach aches anymore. So because my diet is clean with my greens in the morning and my reds and my collagen protein because I believe I have leaky gut and with my bone broth and all the other stuff. But it's still really fascinating because I've studied it for so long and I'm a firm believer in this. It's like, yet I've done it for so long and I still can't seem to cure it. I still can't seem to get rid of the days of brain fog at times, which is really interesting because that all comes from your gut. Unless I'm on some heavy dose of turmeric, curcumin. Is it curcumin? Curcumin. That, to me, makes me feel invincible. My brain isn't foggy. The inflammation tends to go down. And I feel, absolutely superior. My sex drive is still fantastic, so I've got no issues with that at all. But I do. It's interesting because
you had the mercury removed from your mouth.
I had the mercury.
I haven't. Is that a thing? Do you believe that the mercury from the dental fillings is going to actually disrupt your digestion?
It can be, but in my opinion, that happens in a small number of patients, a small subset of patients. I think the negative health effects of mercury have been way overstated by a lot of the alternative community. And I say that after going through a pretty comprehensive review of the literature on that in a very objective way. It can be problematic for some people, but it really is a smaller percentage of the population. And again, for a lot of people, I think the potential health utility of removing all mercury has been quite a bit overstated.
Well, I think a lot of things get overstated. We've become a society that's neurotic now. And, you go to Google and you look and there's a poo chart, where you can look at and go, well, I don't have the perfect poo. There must be something wrong with me. Everything on Google is written up so you have something wrong with you, when in reality, we all have something. Look, we're all used cars. As we get older, we become a used car that needs more maintenance.
Really? I don't like to look at myself as a used car.
But we are all used cars. No. We're not new inside. We're not like fresh. We're not like my daughter's got this amazing digestion and she's 6.5, It's like we are as we get older and the way we've lived in our society and everything else. So when you work with somebody, what type of process do you take them through? Because we're going to give out your website and everything else. And I'm a firm believer in what you're doing because I think if you don't get your digestion right, the inflammation and everything is going to lead you down a bumpy road. What is your whole process so people know this whole process? Because a lot of people fear this. They hear digestion issues. They hear, oh my God, inflammation that leads to cancer and everything else. And I hear cure. So what type of process do you usually put people through so they're not afraid and intimidated by it?
Right. And you make a good point, which is the issue of fear, because, this is something that I'd say in my office, I spend maybe 30% of my time talking patients out of a disease or a diagnosis that they think they have because of internet reading and this like neuroses, orthorexic sort of syndrome people can fall into. So I think it's important just to state and to clarify that in my field, which is functional medicine, which is a synonym maybe for integrative medicine, sometimes we can be a bit overzealous. Sometimes we can order too much testing or give people dietary recommendations that are a bit overzealous. And so I really try to take a approach of asking, what is the most important intervention that we can do? How can I get the maximum gain for the minimum investment? And so I try to have this clinical model where we're really practical, we're really evidence-based, but we're also conservative, and we're not going to turn people into health nuts. If you want to be a health nut and you enjoy it and you want to go the extra mile, totally fine. But I don't want to turn people into health nuts that don't need to be turned into health nuts. And essentially,
David just burped, by the way.
Great. So yeah, we're already making good progress.
Loaded stomach. Yes, go on.
But essentially, it's just I take people through what's called an algorithm, which is essentially looking at what their symptoms are and their history tells us, and then working through the available testing and treatment options for the gut in the most efficient process that's possible. And what this may look like is, let's say there's 10 potential steps you could go through. Someone who's generally healthy and only has some mild imbalances in the gut may only need 2 of those 10 steps. People that have moderate to severe Crohn's disease, they may need to go through 8 or 9 of those 10 steps. So it's not to say that there's these blanket recommendations that we can make for everyone, but it's trying to get people to the right modifications to their diet and other preferably natural items like probiotics or herbal medicines that will help them strike the right balance in the gut and then reap all the health benefits that are secondary to that.
I was wondering, something I learned in my life is you talked about irritable bowel syndrome, is that there's something called the brain gut, where a lot of times when we think of depression and anxiety and the neurotransmitters that are released to create a positive well-being feeling, that actually a lot of it stems in the gut. Is that true?
Absolutely. We're learning a lot about the gut-brain connection. And I can say in my office, it's fairly routine that we'll see people who have either depression or fatigue or anxiety or brain fog that improves as we improve the health of their gut. And we're seeing this also start to be published in some of the high-level peer-reviewed medical literature, wherein we're seeing very high-level scientific support for probiotics being able to help and aid in depression and or anxiety as just one example. Not to say that a probiotic is going to fix every case of those, but we're definitely seeing pretty impressive medical literature showing that they can be helpful for both depression and anxiety.
Excellent.
It's interesting because my mother suffered from depression and anxiety. She never went and got a colonoscopy at all, so she never knew what was going on down there, and then died of liver cancer in a 5-day period. So it all spread through her body. And I come from mediocre genetics, and I don't allow my genetics to really, form who I am as a person, because I've done a lot of reading, Bruce Lipton and so forth, with epigenetics and so forth, and really taking care of yourself and being a health nut and being aware of things. I truly believe that, from talking to so many doctors and everything else, we all have markers, we have things in our bodies, we have things we need to be aware of, but we also can take care of our own body and change, because there's so much amazing stuff available. And I think anybody who's listening right now, if you've got gut issues, and your parents had gut issues and you have gut issues, you don't need to have the story of, well, I just got the same gut issues my mom and dad have, and that's just me, that's my genetics, and that's the way I'm going to suffer through my life. Because I believe in everything in your mind can be fixed through positive thinking and the right people that you're connected with. That's why I was so excited about this call, because it's been my quest, because I truly believe that I'm going to heal my gut. There's no reason in the world. I mean, I've healed 95% of it. I always feel that final 5% is like that final mountaintop, where you're just like, yeah, it's like the hardest last bit, because you've gone so far and you just can't get that last bit. So maybe you're going to be that last bit. Maybe I got to get a consultation with you.
Well, let's pick into a few of your details if you don't mind, because people might learn some stuff from that. So your main symptoms are belching, bloating, and brain fog. Or how about your stool frequency and consistency? Do you have more frequent loose stools or more constipative, less frequent stools?
No, I mean, my stools are fine. I mean,
wait a minute, they're not. Sometimes they're splatter. You're doing splatter or Jackson Pollock on the side of the bowl.
No, side of the bowl. No, definitely.
Good analogy.
I take some herbs and stuff like that, and they're sometimes harder. There's a lot, like in the morning. I mean, I'll go to the bathroom 3 or 4 times in the morning, and I'll get it all out. So, I mean, it will all come out, and it's usually shaped fine. Sometimes it's a little thinner, but usually it's shaped like a snake if we need to talk about it, The burping, sometimes it's a double burp when I eat something that doesn't agree with me. Some days I don't have it at all, depending on what I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
My thing, if you looked at my blood work, my fructosium level is high, so I can definitely be a little hyperglycemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not good if I eat lots of carbs, my blood sugar will go up. If I lay off of carbs, my resting blood sugar will be, 87 to 92, most of the time and stuff. And that other blood sugar marker will be fine as well, too. So it is that, and the bloating isn't that bad. It's not really, I'm super bloated. It's just that reverse burp that I'll get. That's my big thing. I'll lay down and I'll feel that reverse burp and I got to sit up and I have to belch. And there's no burning or really acid that comes up. I mean, granted, if I eat too many nuts or something, I can feel that come up because that's just irritating my gut. But, I've had the colonoscopy done and everything else. There's no reflux. There's no scarring of acid reflux in me at all. There's nothing.
Good.
There's none of that. It's just, there's something that's not fully digested. And I take lots of different herbs, from endorphin by Metagenics to, if I went through the list of some of the great stuff that I take, nothing seems to fully calm it down. The bone broth seems to work. The collagen protein seems to work. But then all of a sudden my body gets used to it, and then it just decides to have that belching feeling again for a week. So that's really my big symptom.
Is the belching, and you also mentioned brain fog. How often does that happen?
It just depends. When I'm on the Curacurum, it's great. When I take a lot of turmeric, it doesn't really happen. The brain fog, I go through periods of brain fog. I'm in a pretty bad brain fog state right now because I'm going through a little bit of stress. So when I'm working out, I'll get a little shortness of breath from anxiety feeling because the brain fog kind of makes me feel anxious. So, I kind of like my cardio is not nearly as good. My workouts aren't nearly as good when I'm brain fogging. I sleep fine. It takes me about 20 minutes to fall asleep, but I sleep through the night. I don't have to get up and pee. My sex drive is pretty amazing. I can have sex all night long. I don't have low testosterone. It doesn't really affect me that way.
Any environmental or seasonal allergies?
Sometimes I do. Like, that's probably the reason I'm a little foggy right now, because the stuff is in the air. It's like LA, there's just things that are in the air in May. So I kind of feel that way. I don't get, knock on wood, I don't get sick. Like my daughter had last weekend, she had rotavirus for 24 hours, and she was all over me. She just threw up, and then she, came on, and then we hung out all day. And, I'll feel lousy the next day, because when she gets the flu or has fever, I'll feel kind of lousy the next day. But I take, mushroom immunity and everything else, and I haven't been sick all winter. And this is probably one of the worst winters for colds, with people. So I'm pretty good that way. It's that stomach feeling of, and I don't drink alcohol.
You don't smoke. You don't drink coffee.
I don't drink coffee.
I'm bloated all the time. I'm the guy who's bloated all the time.
Yeah, John's got the same symptoms, but you just add the bloating all the time.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And have you ever tried the low FODMAP diet?
No, what's that one?
No, I've heard of it. Somebody was telling me about it, and I didn't.
Well, there are two things that kind of flag for me based upon this brief snippet, but I'm also pretty good at reading these things kind of quickly. You may have a degree of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Have you been tested for that? It's a breath test. You take a breath sample every 20 minutes for about 3 hours.
No, I've never done that one. I would remember that one.
So that's a pretty major test in terms of that may underlie depending on the study that you read, up to 84% of IBS. Now, it's not to say that you have IBS, but it's just looking at the research literature that we have in the condition of IBS, which has a lot of gastrointestinal symptoms. We know that the most generous estimates show that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth may underlie as much as 84% of IBS. Now, the low FODMAP diet is a diet that can be helpful for this SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this is essentially where you have an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, and they produce gases. And that's what we test for in the breath test for high levels of gases. Those gases can cause belching, bloating, amongst other things. And the low FODMAP diet
let me ask you a question. Could it
Sure.
Could it also cause, because there's certain things, Michael, that I'll eat and I will have a taste in my mouth. I feel like somebody died inside there. Like, it's like, whoa, what was it? I ate like coconut yogurt or something, and then I feel like it's rotting, like I'll brush my teeth 25 times and I can't get that taste out of my mouth until I eat another meal or drink tons of water. And that's probably, that could be the gases kind of coming out from, would it, because that's a big thing with me. Like some days it's like, I'm like, whoa, I got a bad taste in my mouth. How do I get rid of it?
Yeah, it's possible that could be contributing to that. It's not, I would say, a keystone, symptom that's associated with it, but it could be. These things can sometimes manifest in a variety of ways. But definitely, you flag for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and the low FODMAP diet essentially restricts foods that feed bacteria. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you have too much bacteria in your small intestine, you don't want to eat foods that feed bacteria, because then you're feeding the problem. So the low FODMAP diet decreases the intake of those foods. And these foods are seemingly healthy, right? Asparagus, cauliflower. These are foods that are high in FODMAPs and are to be avoided on this diet. One doesn't have to do this diet forever, but what's counterintuitive is many of the foods that are restricted seem healthy at face value, but for people with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, they can be problematic.
Wow. Is there a good, because this is, I know when I was about 12 years old, the doctor said, I had IBS. And then around that same time, they say you got obsessive compulsive disorder, right? Which I don't think you can diagnose a kid with that, but they did.
They were right about that.
Yeah, they were. but I think, I don't have those symptoms I had then, or I learned how to deal with life better or whatever. But so they were probably right on, right? They probably knew all the way back then, huh?
It's funny. There was a study done recently, and not all the data supports this, but essentially they looked at a large amount of patients, and they found that in 2/3 of patients, they developed IBS, and then they developed either anxiety, depression, or something similar, like obsessive compulsive disorder. We could classify in there too. So 2/3 developed IBS and then neurological symptoms. Only 1/3 develop neurological symptoms first and then IBS. So it does seem like there's a pretty powerful gut to brain connection.
It's interesting because I have ADD, which is actually a blessing as I got older, because it allows me to do so many different things at once. I'm an amazing multitasker, and it's also good for creativity. But as a kid, I was suffering. I suffered through 18 years of school until I graduated high school, and then I suffered through 4 years of college. But at least college, I didn't have to go to class and sit there and be tortured. It was torture for me to sit. Torture. Yeah. It was like I felt like I was in a prison in my brain. So I'm going to check out. I know we're way over time. This is our longest podcast ever.
Well, wait, where can we learn more, Doc? Where can we learn more about this stuff? Is it, how do you spell it? FODMAP?
FODMAP. Yep, FODMAP, all one word. And you can pretty easily just punch in low FODMAP into Google and get a food list pretty easily. Not every food list is gonna match up just for your listeners, but just go with one of those. That'll get you in the ballpark. And I would follow the diet for at least 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, you should at least have an initial inkling this is helping or this is not helping. If it's not helping, move on. But if it is helping, you can stay on the diet for up to 4 to 6 weeks and then start to reintroduce the foods that you cut out and figure out what food you're okay with and what food you're sensitive to.
You want to try this? I'm down to try.
I'm down. Let's do the challenge.
How about we do the challenge, then we come back and talk to you in a few weeks. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And the other thing I'll just throw out there for you guys to think about while you're doing a little bit of internet research is the other thing, David, that you flag for is a histamine intolerance. And that's why I asked about the environmental allergies, because bacteria in your gut produce histamine, and histamine affects the way your stomach functions, your stomach acid levels, and it also affects things like brain fog and environmental allergies. So some of this could also be histamine intolerant. So to the degree to which you don't respond to a low FODMAP diet, and if you test for and treat SIBO, the degree to which you don't respond for that, I would secondarily then look to histamine intolerance.
Okay. So, Michael, how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way they can get in touch with you? Because this is our longest podcast ever. It's been extremely fascinating
And helpful.
Because usually, we're 10 minutes in and out and, we basically give you a little bit of advice. But this is something that it's a lifelong struggle for me. And I truly believe, and John, and we both.
Many people listening, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, many people. And I think, we have the opportunity now to live a long time. You don't have to suffer at all. So, Michael, where do they get in touch with you?
My website's probably the best place to plug in, and that is just drruscio.com, drruscio.com. We have a weekly video, weekly article, weekly podcast. We also have a newsletter that's specifically for clinicians, and a book coming out later this year. And too much on my plate, but that's the lion's share of it, I guess.
Awesome, man. Stay on afterwards. I got to ask you one quick question. For all the rest of you, we are gone and out. This was a great episode. The reality is you don't need to suffer with a bad stomach anymore. Stomach ache should be a thing of the past. Bloating, gas, everything else can be fixed. Go to Michael's website. John, give the tagline.
Anyway, guys, come on back tomorrow for more self-help that doesn't suck.